Hi, welcome to another episode in the series of Management by the Book. Essentially, what we're talking about today is processes. My name is Dr. Iseko, and I'll be taking you through SOP processes, the foundational building block. Now, some people tend to think that SOPs and processes are interchangeable. Maybe they are. For me, the SOP is a type of process, and I will explain why. We're going to focus on SOPs, which are the building block of any system. This includes management, and anybody that must call themselves a manager, be a manager, or deliver as a manager must understand how to make this work and work in their department, in their company, in any situation they find themselves. And that's what we're talking about today. So let's get right into it. So Isaiah 28 verse 10 talks about putting things line upon line, precept upon precept. And one of the basic building blocks for any system is a combination of steps, of processes that come together. You can see a great company, a great system, especially those that can outlive the founder, outlive the department head, outlive the individual, even families. They must be built upon certain philosophies, practices, line upon line and precept upon precept, just like it says in the Bible. Genesis 1 verse 2, we see how the compilation of God's word has lots of processes, how to do things, instructions on what to do, when to do them. Throughout Genesis 1, the Bible shows us how God created a new system, how God created this whole earth. Let's call it an institution or a company. And it shows how he does it step by step. That stepwise process, if you're going to create another world, it will likely follow a similar stepwise process. And that is how it is when we are creating things. We must make it in such a way that it can be repeated again and again. Ecclesiastes 8 verse 6 talks about for everything there's a proper time and procedure, depending on the version you use. I think in NIV or Message, it says for everything under the earth, there's a proper time and procedure. And so if you are going to be a successful professional manager, you must be able to put this down clearly in writing and state what is the proper time, what is the proper procedure for getting tasks and things done. Genesis 8 verse 22 tells us about a certain procedure that anytime you want to harvest, you put seed in the ground and it goes through time. Further in the Bible, it explains how that seed gets into the ground, it dies, and shows us stepwise processes to having a harvest. Oftentimes people see a harvest and they say, oh, miracle. No. Somebody, it may not be you, follow the system, follow the principle, because God does not break systems. He does not break protocol. He follows them. Somebody has followed it. You may just not know who. But every harvest that you see must be traceable to a seed, because that is the process of things. We look through the entire books of Moses and you will see processes upon systems, how to worship God, how to deal with fellow human beings, what to do, what not to do. These are all laid down processes and principles that God laid down for his people. And likewise, when you are building anything of value, you must also lay down these processes, and that is what we are talking about, which we talked about also in systems. So what is a process? We say that a series of steps gives rise to what we call a process. A series of processes gives rise to what we call a stream. A series of streams gives rise to what we call a system. We say there are 5 cardinal systems in every company, you remember? And those 5 cardinal systems come together to form an institution, a company, a body, a church. And all such institutions come together to form an industry, and industries come together to form a nation. That is how the world is built. If you do not agree with this, maybe when you build your own world, you can do something else. But this is essentially how it works. And the process is the basic, therefore the basic building block of the system. Some can say steps, but no. If you don't put the steps together, it's still random. So the basic building block that determines that this is systematic. The opposite of system, I'm sure you know, is random. So the basic building block is the process, which is a combination of steps in an orderly fashion. When you document how you work, how we fulfill our vision and mission, that is the process. All our documentation of how we want to work, how we want to act, what we want to do to fulfill what we have set out like a vision or a mission, that spells out our process. Number 3, The real culture of an organization is spelled out in processes. And mark you, even if there's no process written down, there's a process in operation. Whatever people have agreed that this is what you're going to be doing, you want to marry, you go first and knock on the door, then you do that. That is a process. It may be written or not, but that is the actual culture. Now, anything that is unwritten can be very deadly. Why? Because people can deviate from it without consequence. People can do whatever they like. People can decide that, for my own, I want it different. And whenever there is randomness, it is the opposite of a system, and that is essentially what we call chaos. So, what is a process still? A process must be written. We said the process is a set of steps that are written. They are taught and they are tested. If you have not taught or tested those steps with your people, with yourself, you don't have a system. If it's not referenced every time there's a query, anytime there needs to be punishment, anytime there's a complaint, if you not go back to reference it, it's not a process. A process must be supervised and monitored, and I will explain the difference between supervising and monitoring. To supervise essentially means that a process, supervise means to watch while it is being done. So a manager, a professional, watches while this is being done. That is to supervise. To monitor, however, is to supervise, is to check after it has been done. So supervising is to look while it is being done and compare against the laid down written protocol. Monitoring is to check after it has been done, typically checking on outcomes, checking on outputs, checking on certain things that can be pointers to whether it was carried out properly or not. And number 5, the process must be responsive. It's only God that does not change his mind. Numbers chapter 23. We are men, we change our mind. So when we find deficiencies in processes, we do not say, no, it's process. No, we must be ready to improve upon it, to change it, and sometimes to even not obey it if it's a critical situation. Number 6, they must be improved upon. Number 7, they must be sacrosanct. As much as, even though there's an ability to be responsive, everybody must make reference. Anytime we have to go outside the process, we must know we are doing something wrong and we must record it. So the process must be sacrosanct. So this is what constitutes a process in essence. All right. So why do we have processes? Why? Why processes? We have processes because it helps us to have a consistent outcome. It helps us to have less errors, less stress, less losses. We have processes because we have better profits and less costs from waste, from different things. We can improve on it readily. It improves innovation. It makes us to take on staff easier. If I want to take on a new staff and there are processes, he can read through everything that is supposed to be. He can go through how we do what, and then it's now easier. The days of apprenticeship as a model of growing a system is over, while it is very laborious to scale. And in times of workforce turnover, that the workforce can turn over after 6 months, somebody has gone, that person has come. If you don't have something that can onboard people quickly, you will do apprenticeship, as soon as they get it, they leave, and your system falls down to the ground. So the written down process makes it easier to onboard, makes it easier to manage. It reduces key man risk, where everything depends on one person. Other people can pick it up and continue. It makes for happier staff, makes for happier guests and clients. Of course, that's why processes. So let's get into the meat. There are several types of processes. When a process doesn't have steps, it just lists what we expect and how we want. We call that a policy. When it is date-wise, that says this is what is done at this time of the month, at this time of the year, at this time of the quarter, that we call a calendar process. And the Bible talks about men of Issachar that had understanding of the times. So they have a calendar-like process. Number 3, a stepwise process, which is what we are talking about today, which is SOPs. Processes that are written down step by step, one thing after the other. Those are step SOPs. Then we have processes that are written down to just check that we are not failing, to make sure that everything is in order. That's what we call a checklist type of process. And then we have processes that, by virtue of filling a form or bringing information in, we will have fulfilled certain criteria of certain demands, and that's what we call a form, and that is a form type. And the final type, in times when the work is very complex and involves professionals who already know what they are doing, see doctors, surgeons, consultants, people like that, what type of process we give out is called standards. This is the standard. This must be turned out in 15 minutes. This must have in 5 minutes. We just write the standards and we leave what they are doing to their discretion, but they must meet these preset standards. So those are the 5 types of processes that make up a system. And our focus is an SOP process. And we've said an SOP process is a series of actions or steps taken to achieve a particular end, typically in sequence as they occur. Okay, so how do we create an SOP? We typically do it, have 4 steps to creating an SOP. Number 1 is to document everything that it involves. Number 2 is to publish, and I'll explain them in detail. Number 3 is to manage it, and number 4 to perpetuate it. Now all 4 must be involved, otherwise you will have a whole bookload of systems written down and say, this is our systems book, and you will not see it in the actual staff working, you will not see it in your results. So it must be documented, it must be published, it must be managed, and it must be perpetuated. So I will get right into it. Step 1, document. How do we document? We gather all related processes together. Say for example, I want to have a process of combing my hair. Okay, I'm sure you can see it's not very well combed. I have a process of combing my hair. We'll gather all the related processes together and put that together in a value stream. I'll say, okay, getting ready to go to work in the morning involves taking a shower, brushing. Each of them have different processes. We'll group them together. So we'll group related processes. Don't just write a process that is out of the blue, otherwise it becomes not organized. Remember our definition of a system, it's organized. So find all the processes that can be related together and put them together in what we call a stream. Then write the steps of each process. First you get the comb, clean the comb, oil the hair, then and then you write these things which we call the other 5 components of documentation. Number 1, you write why. Very important to write why as an outcome, because you are not dealing with robots, you are dealing with people. People must know why what they are doing matters, if they are to do it, and more importantly, if they are to do it well. If they are to realize when things are going wrong and make a deviation, it's only because they understand why. They understand the outcome that is expected. Number 2, the steps. What? This is a brief summary of what the entire step entails. It should not be more than 3 words. Identify comb. Move through, just summary. Number 3 is the how. Each step is now further described, and I'll show you an example. So you now further describe each step in detail. Okay? So the Bible talks in Habakkuk 2 that write the vision, the process, the things, make it plain, that the person that is running can be able to read that he is running. The what allows them to read where they are running. The how, they have to sit down and study. Like we say in 2 Timothy, study to show thyself approved. So those people have to study, are typically new staff and the others, that they have to study carefully. Okay, then 4, who? Every step, who is responsible for the step? Remember, everybody's task is nobody's task. Everybody's task is absolutely nobody's task. And number 5, when? How long is each step expected to take, or in what sequence is it supposed to happen? So you have the why, you have the what, you have the how, you have the who, and you have the when. These are the components that make up the documentation of a process. So we will look again and look at this documentation. So look at an example. If we have outpatient department prescription as a stream, all the processes that it takes to give a patient or somebody a drug, I'll use, of course, I'm a doctor, so I'll use that. So let's look at the process under the stream. The first process is prescription. The second process is vetting. And that process is packaging, costing, dispensing, value exchange, which is money or HMO information, and follow-up. Put all of that together, that's the stream. We're going to now focus. We want to write on one process, which is how to dispense drugs. But you can see, we must find a stream where we put them in related, so that each process is not hanging on its own, is related to others in what we call a value stream. Then we now take the dispensing process and write why. Why do we dispense? What do we dispense? How? Who does what and when? So let's look. So in the process, we can see in the name of process, we can see dispensing is the name of the process. There's a stream which we talked about, all the related ones, and we say outpatient prescriptions. We typically put a process ID. Try and get a numbering system. Create any one that fits you. It's just for ease of searching or ease of finding. The manager responsible and the why. Why? So that people can get better, so that people can be satisfied, so that people can get the final outcome. We write why. Then we write the what. Like I said, what is the name of the step, and it allows the person to easily review this. Somebody that's been doing it for a while can easily review this and in a hurry while they are running. He may run that readeth it. So you can see the step: acknowledgement, identity, dispense and explain, and thanks, for example. Now we see the how, which is the description of each step. Acknowledgement: greet, smile, make social connection. Identity: introduce yourself, do this, dispense, and you can see the how. Then the who is going to do each of this, and when is it expected, or how long is each of this expected to take. So this is now represents an almost complete process. What is not also here is what date it was approved and who approved it. Very important, because this is like law. People must be able to know when it was done, when it was last updated, and be able to follow suit thereby. So that is an example of how we create a system. So we come to the next step. We've talked about documentation, which is the first step of creating a process. The next step is to publish. And by publishing, first you review what you have written down, the what, the why, everything. You come and review it. And what are you reviewing for? Number one, you consider common errors. An error that can happen is that the wrong person can give the wrong drug. You check, okay, identity is there, it will not happen. What if somebody has a reaction to the drug? What do? You put it. So you keep on making sure that your written down process can solve all the problems. You try and see into the future as far as possible. Number two of review is that you check alignment. You check that this process is not hanging out of the blues. It fits to the general body of knowledge in the establishment or the institution. Number three is that you check the ease of reading, ease of formatting. Sometimes we use all P's. You use a mnemonic, so that your people can easily remember, recall, and use it over and over again. Number two, get approval. Typically a senior manager, an organization, somebody that can see all the other processes in the organization, can see the big picture, and make sure that everything links, so that people are not building things. So you get approval, and then you notify everybody that is involved in using that process. So you publish and you notify. In our system, we use the shared file system. So we say we have a new process, this is it, this is where to find it, here's the link, and everybody that has access will now get to that link and review it. So that is what you do. You publish that process that you have written, and that's what happens. So the third step in creating or make sure a process stands is management. And management, we talk about documenting, publishing. So if you just document and publish, we just end up having a book or something that everything is written somewhere, but doesn't necessarily mean it will work. Management is what brings it to life, and that is essentially what a manager is there for, to bring these processes to life. And the first thing is to teach every story, things that have happened in the past, in the future, fictitious, formed up, or actual stories, incidents, cases. Use it to teach that process. Don't let a bad experience or a bad outcome go to waste. Use it to teach what you have just put together to prevent it from happening in the future. So teach and test them, ask them questions. Number two, model it. Where it's possible to model, you do it in their front so that they can see you doing it. Don't bring out a process of time of coming to work and you come late. No, you model it. Number three is to now supervise. Remember, I talked about supervision and monitoring. Supervise is you have modeled it, so they have modeled it and they are watching you. Then now they will do it while you are watching them. Now the difference between supervising and meddling is that in supervising, you are checking against a laid down standard. While in meddling, you are just checking with your eyes, and then you are now nitpicking. No, that's wrong, that's wrong. Anything you want to look that is wrong must be written down that is wrong in where it was written down ab initio. So supervision must be based and in comparison to an already laid down something that's already been written down. Number four is check access to documentation. Very critical. You check that all your staff have access, that at any time they want to review this, they can have access to it, and they have access to it while at work. They have access to it, they can review it at the point of service. All right. So number four, how do we said document, we said publish, we said manage, and number four is perpetuate. To perpetuate a process is to make sure that you are measuring and you are monitoring. I think it's Edward Deming that says anything that is not measured will not be done. So there are key data or output that you review. Those data helps you to monitor what is going wrong and what is going right. Reason for you to go back and check on that process again. Reason for you to go back and check, is this thing really working? Reason and go and check and ask, why did you do it this way? I went through the cases you saw yesterday and I can see 1, 2, 3 of them. You did not check their age. Why did you not follow the age which the process already said? So you measure and you monitor the output. So that's how to monitor. And these are the things you monitor: activity data, output data, outcome data, and I will explain this in another video. Different thing, output and outcome. Output is just what you're able to accomplish. Outcome is what the people felt by it. What do we finally say happened? Was it good or was it bad? Feedback data, feedback incidents. People fill feedback forms, customer satisfaction, and then you now update and improve your processes. Now, for you to update, there are 2 forms. Either you do it proactively or reactively. Proactively means that you are able, and this is where we differentiate the bad managers from the very good managers. The very good managers can sit down in their mind, look through every step of the way, find out what can go wrong, and write a process that addresses everything. Now, the not so good managers will wait for something to go wrong, then now go and fix their process. Something went wrong, go and fix. That is reactive. So a good manager must be able to do both, but more so on the proactive side, and that is how processes are perpetuated and make sure that they work from generation to generation. All right. In conclusion, John Maxwell has a saying that everything rises and falls on leadership. I agree, but I also think it goes further. Everything rises and falls on systems. Everything rises and falls on systems. The extent to which the leader has systems is the extent to which he will see results and see those results consistently over time. Yes, so everything rises and falls on systems. So it's also said that we rise to the level of our goals. Whatever we aspire for, that is likely where we will reach. But we fall to the level of our systems. If you do not have a system that gets you to do things in a particular way at a particular time to achieve a particular result that is organized, man, you are unlikely to reach that goal. So whatever result you have is the outcome of the process that you have defined for yourself. Number 3, we cannot succeed beyond the process that we have in place. We absolutely cannot succeed beyond the process we have, except it's an accident or it is luck. Okay, it's just an accident somehow, or in Christian circles we say it's a miracle. But really, if you have deliberately and proactively and actively put a system, it means that that miracle or that outcome can be replicated again and again and again. And the Bible talks about he who will build a tower must first sit down and count the cost. The cost of building a tower is to build it properly, is to count the cost. The cost of building a company, a department, a life, a successful life is to sit down, have the discipline to write, have the discipline to implement, have the discipline to obey the system. And finally, processes require discipline. Discipline never ever comes naturally. Just like the natural outcome of putting bread on the table is decay. For anything to rise, it must rise by design, not by default. So discipline never comes naturally. Your job as a manager, as a leader, as somebody aspiring for a next level, as somebody aspiring to live by the book, is to provide that discipline first to yourself and then to the people that are under you. I hope this helps. Thank you very much for listening. Perhaps another time.